The boardroom went silent. 12 executives sat around the massive conference table, their attention fixed on the woman walking through the door. Some looked confused. Others looked annoyed. A few barely glanced up from their phones. At the head of the table, Chairman Robert Langley stood and adjusted his suit. A smile spread across his face. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to meet the person who just acquired controlling interest in Harper Global Holdings." The room immediately erupted into whispers. "What? Controlling interest? Who is she? How is that possible?" Several executives exchanged nervous looks. For months, rumors had spread throughout the company. An anonymous investor had been quietly buying shares. Nobody knew who the investor was. Nobody knew how much they owned. And nobody expected the investor to be a young woman walking into the boardroom with calm confidence. Then Robert turned toward her. "Miss Sophia Bennett." The room fell silent once again. Sophia smiled politely. "Good morning, everyone." Most of the executives simply stared, but one man nearly stopped breathing. Richard Harper, Senior Executive Vice President. His face drained of color. His fingers tightened around the edge of the table, because he knew exactly who she was. 5 years earlier, he had laughed at her. 5 years earlier, he had humiliated her in front of dozens of people. 5 years earlier, he had thrown money at her feet and treated her like she was worthless. Back then, she had been a struggling club dancer. Now she owned his company. And for the first time in years, Richard Harper looked afraid. Sophia noticed. Their eyes met. 1,000 memories flashed through Richard's mind. The nightclub, the laughter, the insults, the humiliation. Sophia simply smiled. Then she took her seat. The seat at the head of the table. The seat above everyone else. The room remained silent. Nobody knew what to say. Nobody understood how a woman none of them had ever heard of suddenly owned the company. But Richard knew, and that terrified him. Before we continue, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment below. Do you believe success is the best revenge? Let us know your answer. Because Richard Harper was about to learn a lesson he would never forget. 5 years earlier, Sophia Bennett was exhausted. She had worked 14 days straight. Her feet hurt. Her back hurt. And the anxiety of unpaid bills followed her everywhere. At 26 years old, life felt like a never-ending struggle. Every morning began with worry. Every night ended with worry. The small apartment she shared with her mother barely felt like home anymore. It felt like survival. One evening, she sat beside her mother's hospital bed. Her mother looked pale, but still managed to smile. "You look tired." Sophia forced a laugh. "I could sleep for a week." "You should take a day off." "And pay the bills with what?" Her mother sighed. The answer was obvious. There wasn't one. Medical treatments were expensive. Rent was expensive. Food was expensive. Everything seemed expensive except the jobs available to people like Sophia. "You work too hard," her mother whispered. Sophia squeezed her hand. "I'm okay." "No, you're not." Sophia looked away. Her mother knew her too well. "I'll be okay when things get better." Her mother smiled softly. "They will." Sophia wished she had the same confidence. 3 hours later, she was standing under the bright lights of Eclipse Lounge, one of the most exclusive nightclubs in the city. The wealthy came there to celebrate, to drink, to network, to spend more money in one night than Sophia earned in months. She wasn't there to judge them. She was there to survive. The music pounded through the club. Customers filled every table. The VIP section overflowed with executives, celebrities, and investors. Sophia had learned long ago to ignore rude comments, to ignore arrogance, to ignore people who treated workers like furniture. But some people made that difficult. That night, a group of executives occupied the largest VIP booth in the club. They were loud, drunk, and determined to make sure everyone noticed them. The leader of the group was Richard Harper. Even before Sophia approached the table, she could hear him boasting. "I closed the deal in less than 10 minutes. His friends laughed. "Of course you did. Nobody says no to Richard Harper." Richard grinned. "Exactly." The group erupted into laughter. Sophia approached with a professional smile. "Good evening, gentlemen. Can I get you anything else?" Richard looked up. For a moment, his eyes lingered on her. Not respectfully, not kindly, like she was an object, a thing, not a person. "We'll take another bottle." "Certainly." Sophia turned to leave. Then one of the executives spoke. "Wait." She stopped. "Yes, sir." The man smirked. "How much do you think this bottle costs?" Sophia blinked. "I don't know. Take a guess." She hesitated. A few $100s? The table exploded with laughter. Richard nearly choked on his drink. A few hundred? Another executive slapped the table. That's adorable. It's $5,000. More laughter. Sophia forced a polite smile. Congratulations. The response caught them off guard. Richard raised an eyebrow. Congratulations? You seem proud of it. Several men exchanged looks. One of them laughed. I like her. Richard leaned back. What do you make in a month? The question felt strange. Personal. Inappropriate. Sophia should have walked away. Instead, she answered. Enough to pay my bills. The table erupted with laughter again. Richard shook his head. That's not what I asked. Sophia's smile disappeared. What does it matter? Because I'm curious. His grin widened. I probably spend more on lunch than you make in a week. The men around him laughed. Sophia remained silent. Richard wasn't finished. You know what's fascinating? Nobody answered. He pointed around the table. Every person sitting here controls millions of dollars. His eyes returned to Sophia. Meanwhile, you're serving drinks. The insult landed exactly as intended. The executives laughed again. Sophia felt heat rising in her chest. But she refused to react. People like Richard wanted reactions. They enjoyed them. So she simply nodded. Would you like that bottle or not? The table fell quiet. Richard stared at her. Then he smiled. Oh, she's got attitude. His friends laughed. Sophia turned and walked away. Behind her, the laughter continued. But something about her response bothered Richard. People usually accepted his insults. People usually tried to impress him. She hadn't. And he didn't like that. An hour later, Sophia returned with another order. The executives were significantly drunker. The conversation had become louder, cruder, more obnoxious. As she placed drinks on the table, Richard suddenly spoke. Tell me something. Sophia didn't respond. Do you enjoy this? She looked at him. Enjoy what? This life. The table became quiet. Richard gestured around the club. Working nights. Taking orders. Watching other people live the life you wish you had. Sophia stared at him. Then she answered calmly. No. The executives smiled. They thought they had won. Then Sophia continued. But I enjoy earning my own way. The smiles disappeared. And I sleep very well knowing I don't need to humiliate strangers to feel important. The table froze. For a moment nobody spoke. Richard's expression darkened. The men around him looked shocked. Nobody talked to Richard Harper like that. Nobody. The tension became thick enough to touch. Then Richard slowly smiled. A dangerous smile. A smile that promised trouble. Sophia immediately realized she had embarrassed him. And embarrassed men with power were often the most dangerous kind. She turned and walked away. But she could feel Richard watching her. And something told her the night was far from over. Sophia could feel Richard Harper's eyes following her across the club. She tried to focus on work. Tried to ignore the uneasy feeling growing in her stomach. But experience had taught her something. Powerful people rarely liked being embarrassed. And Richard Harper had just been embarrassed in front of his friends. That made him dangerous. For the next hour, Sophia stayed busy serving customers and avoiding the VIP section whenever possible. Unfortunately, avoiding Richard Harper proved impossible. Near midnight, the club manager hurried toward her. Sophia. She turned. Yes. VIP table 7 is requesting you. Her stomach tightened. Can someone else handle them? The manager frowned. They specifically asked for you. Of course they did. Sophia glanced toward the VIP section. Richard was already looking in her direction. Smiling. She hated that smile. Still, refusing wasn't an option. Not if she wanted to keep her job. Taking a deep breath, she walked toward the table. The moment she arrived, the executives fell silent. The atmosphere felt strange, like they were waiting for something. Richard leaned back comfortably. There she is. What can I get you, gentlemen? Richard ignored the question. Tell us something, Sophia. She remained standing. What? If money wasn't a problem, what would you do with your life? The men smirked. Sophia knew this wasn't genuine curiosity. It was entertainment. For them. Still, she answered. I'd start a business. The entire table burst into laughter. One executive nearly spilled his drink. A business. Another wiped tears from his eyes. That's hilarious. Richard chuckled. What kind of business? Sophia crossed her arms. Why is that funny? Richard grinned. It isn't. Then why are you laughing? More silence. The smile slowly disappeared from Richard's face. Because once again, she wasn't playing along. One of his friends jumped in. Come on, Richard. Let her dream. The table laughed. Another executive raised his glass. Here's to future billionaire Sophia. The laughter grew louder. Sophia felt humiliation burning inside her. But she refused to show it. Richard leaned forward. Let's be realistic. What does that mean? It means some people are meant to lead. His smile returned. And some people are meant to serve. The table erupted. Sophia felt her jaw tighten. For a moment, she considered responding. Then she remembered the hospital bills, the rent, her mother's medication. She needed this job. So she simply turned away. Behind her, the laughter continued. But Richard wasn't satisfied. Not yet. The next 30 minutes only made things worse. Every time Sophia walked past the table, one of the executives had another comment. Another joke. Another insult disguised as humor. She endured all of it. Because she had no choice. Until Richard crossed the line. Near 1 in the morning, the club became busier. Sophia was carrying an order to another table when Richard suddenly called out. Ladies and gentlemen. The volume of his voice grabbed attention. Nearby guests looked over. Sophia froze. Richard stood from his seat, holding a microphone. The DJ had handed it to him. And that was never a good sign. I'd like everyone's attention for a moment. The club gradually became quiet. Sophia's heart dropped. She knew this involved her. She just didn't know how. Yet, Richard pointed directly at her. There she is. Every head turned. Hundreds of eyes landed on Sophia. Instantly, she felt exposed, trapped, humiliated. Richard smiled. This young woman has inspired us tonight. His friends laughed. Sophia's face burned. Richard, oh, don't be shy. More laughter. Richard continued. She told us she plans to become a business owner one day. The crowd reacted with scattered chuckles. The executives laughed openly. Sophia wanted the floor to swallow her. But Richard wasn't done. Actually, he reached into his wallet, then pulled out several bills. The crowd watched curiously. Sophia felt her stomach twist. No, please don't. Richard tossed the money onto the floor. The bills scattered across the polished surface. The room became silent. Then he smiled. Here's your startup capital. His friends exploded with laughter. Several people began recording. Phones appeared everywhere. Sophia couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The humiliation hit her like a physical blow. Richard pointed at the money. Go ahead. The crowd watched. Pick it up. More laughter. Sophia stared at the bills. Then at Richard. Then at the dozens of phones recording. The executives looked delighted. Like children watching a circus act. Come on, Richard said. It's free money. Another executive shouted. Maybe she'll give us stock options someday. The laughter intensified. Sophia's eyes filled with tears. Not because of the money. Not because of the insults. But because they genuinely believed she was beneath them. Less human. Less valuable. Less worthy. All because she worked in a nightclub. Richard pointed again. Pick it up. Sophia looked around. Nobody was helping. Nobody was stopping it. The manager stood nearby looking terrified. Several customers laughed. Others looked uncomfortable. But nobody intervened. And then something changed inside her. Something snapped. Sophia slowly raised her head. Her eyes locked onto Richard's. No. The word landed like a slap. The laughter stopped. Richard blinked. What? I said no. Silence. Complete silence. Nobody expected that. Richard's smile vanished. The atmosphere shifted instantly. Dangerously. What did you say? Sophia took a step forward. For the first time all night. For the first time in years. She stopped being afraid. I said no. The room remained frozen. Richard stared at her. Unbelieving. Nobody had ever challenged him publicly. Especially not someone he considered beneath him. Sophia pointed toward the money. You keep it. A few gasps echoed through the room. Richard's face darkened. His ego had just been wounded in front of everyone. And he hated it. Sophia continued. You think money makes you better than people. Nobody spoke. You think having power gives you the right to humiliate strangers. Richard clenched his jaw. Sophia wasn't finished. But the truth is, the entire club listened. The poorest thing about you isn't your character. The words struck like lightning. Even Richard's friends stopped smiling. Sophia took another step forward. The poorest thing about you is your imagination. Silence. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then she turned around and walked away. The entire club watched. Richard stood frozen. For the first time all night. He had no comeback. No witty response. No clever insult. Because deep down, he knew she was right. The next morning, the video was everywhere. Social media exploded. Millions of views. Millions of comments. Most people supported Sophia. Most people criticized Richard. The executives tried to laugh it off publicly. But privately, the backlash irritated them. Especially Richard. For weeks, people recognized him. People mocked him. People questioned his character. And Richard blamed Sophia for all of it. Meanwhile, Sophia focused on more important things. Her mother's health, work, survival. Then, 3 months later, a knock sounded on her apartment door. Sophia opened it. A man in an expensive suit stood outside. Miss Sophia Bennett. Yes. My name is David Mercer. He handed her a business card. I'm an attorney. Sophia frowned. Okay. I represent the estate of Henry Calloway. She blinked. I think you have the wrong person. The attorney smiled. I don't. What is this about? David looked serious. It's about your family. Sophia's heart skipped a beat. My family. May I come in? 20 minutes later, Sophia sat frozen at her kitchen table. The attorney had just revealed a secret that changed everything. A secret her mother had spent decades hiding. And the more she listened, the harder it became to believe what she was hearing. Because according to the attorney, the life she thought she understood was built on a truth she never knew existed. And what he revealed next would completely transform her future forever. Sophia stared at the attorney. For several seconds, she couldn't speak, couldn't think, couldn't process what she had just heard. There has to be some mistake. David Mercer shook his head. There isn't. Sophia looked at her mother. Tears were already running down the older woman's face. Mom. Her mother lowered her head. And that was all the answer Sophia needed. The attorney opened a thick folder. Years ago, Henry Calloway built one of the largest private business groups in the country. Sophia listened in silence. He had a son. The attorney paused. Your father. Sophia felt her heart stop. My father died before I was born. Yes. David nodded. But before his death, he reconciled with Henry. Sophia looked confused. Then why didn't I know any of this? Her mother finally spoke. Because I was angry. Sophia looked at her. What? I blamed Henry for many things. Fresh tears rolled down her mother's cheeks. I thought keeping you away from that family was the right thing to do. The room fell silent. The attorney continued. Mr. Calloway spent years trying to reconnect. Sophia couldn't believe what she was hearing. He looked for you? Many times. David nodded. But he respected your mother's wishes. Sophia looked down. Her emotions were everywhere. Confusion, shock, sadness, regret. Then David slid several documents across the table. Before his death, Henry updated his will. Sophia glanced at the papers. And David smiled softly. You are the sole beneficiary. Silence. What does that mean? The attorney named a number. Sophia thought she had heard him wrong. Then he repeated it. $87 million. The room spun. Sophia laughed. Then cried. Then laughed again. Because it sounded impossible. Absolutely impossible. But David wasn't finished. There are also ownership interests in several companies. Sophia stared at him. Several. Quite a few. He listed them one after another. Technology, real estate, transportation, manufacturing, investments, businesses she had never heard of, businesses worth millions, some worth billions. Her entire life changed in a single afternoon. But surprisingly, the money wasn't what affected her most. It was the realization that someone she never knew had spent years trying to find her. Someone who had never stopped caring. That realization stayed with her. For months. Then she made a decision. One that shocked everyone around her. She refused to become another rich person spending money carelessly. Instead, she started learning. Every single day, business books replaced television. Financial reports replaced social media. Investment meetings replaced parties. People laughed. Friends questioned her. Some even told her she was wasting her youth. But Sophia ignored them. Because she had spent years watching powerful people make decisions. Now she wanted to understand how. 1 year became 2. 2 became 3. The more she learned, the more confident she became. The more confident she became, the better her decisions became. Companies under her ownership improved. Investments multiplied. Profits grew. Sophia wasn't just preserving wealth. She was building it. Then building even more. By the 4th year, business magazines were talking about her. By the 5th year, people called her one of the fastest rising entrepreneurs in the country. And still, she never forgot that night. The nightclub, the humiliation, The laughter. Not because she wanted revenge, because she wanted perspective. It reminded her where she came from. Meanwhile, Harper Global Holdings was struggling. Very badly. Years of arrogance. Poor leadership. Terrible decisions. Profits declined. Investors lost confidence. The board blamed each other. Executives fought constantly. And leading that chaos was Richard Harper, the same man who once believed he was untouchable. One afternoon, Sophia sat in her office reviewing reports. Her chief advisor entered. "We have an opportunity." Sophia looked up. "What kind?" The advisor placed a file on her desk. Harper Global Holdings. Sophia stared at the company name. Her pulse quickened. "The stock price keeps falling," the advisor explained. "Investors are abandoning them." And the advisor smiled. "If we move now, we can acquire controlling interest." The room became quiet. Sophia slowly leaned back. 5 years earlier, she had been serving drinks. Now she had enough influence to buy corporations. Life was unbelievable. Her advisors studied her face. "You know this company?" Sophia smiled faintly. "You could say that." The advisor laughed. "So what's the decision?" Sophia thought about it. For exactly 5 seconds. "Begin the acquisition." Over the next several months, her team worked quietly, carefully, strategically, share after share, investor after investor. Until one morning, it was done. Sophia Bennett officially owned controlling interest in Harper Global Holdings. The news exploded across financial media. Nobody knew what would happen next, especially not Richard Harper. The emergency board meeting was called immediately. Executives flooded into the conference room. Everyone looked nervous. Everyone wanted answers. Then the chairman stood and introduced the new owner, Sophia Bennett. The moment Richard saw her, his blood ran cold. No, no way. It couldn't be. But it was. The dancer. The woman he mocked. The woman he humiliated. The woman he treated like she was nothing. She now owned the company. His company. Sophia calmly took her seat. The room remained silent. Richard could barely breathe. Finally, one executive spoke. "Miss Bennett, what are your plans for the company?" Sophia smiled. "My plans are simple." Everyone listened. "We're going to rebuild trust." Several executives nodded. "We're going to rebuild performance." More nods. "And we're going to rebuild culture." That made some people uncomfortable. Sophia noticed. Good. Because culture was exactly why she was there. She looked around the room. Then her eyes landed on Richard. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Sophia smiled politely. "Mr. Harper." Richard swallowed. "Yes. I understand you've been with the company for a long time." "Yes." "Then perhaps you can explain why profits have declined for 7 consecutive quarters." The room became quiet. Richard stumbled through an answer. For the next 10 minutes, Sophia dismantled every excuse, every justification, every attempt to avoid responsibility. By the end of the meeting, everyone could see it. The emperor had no clothes. Richard wasn't the brilliant executive he claimed to be. He was simply a man who had spent years taking credit while blaming others. Days later, an independent audit confirmed everything. Poor decisions, mismanagement, leadership failures. The board had no choice. Richard Harper was terminated. The announcement shocked the business world. But not Sophia. After the meeting ended, Richard requested a private conversation. Sophia agreed. One final conversation. He entered her office looking older, smaller, defeated. For several moments, neither spoke. Finally, Richard sighed. "You remember?" Sophia looked at him calmly. "Yes." Richard lowered his eyes. "I was awful to you." "Yes." "I don't expect forgiveness." Sophia remained silent. Richard laughed bitterly. "The funny thing is," he shook his head, "I honestly thought I'd forgotten that night." Sophia watched him carefully. "But you never did." "No." Richard stared out the window. "I spent years believing success made me superior." The words sounded painful. Then life proved otherwise. For the first time, Sophia felt something unexpected. Not satisfaction. Not revenge. Pity. Richard continued. "I was cruel because I thought people beneath me didn't matter." Sophia finally spoke. "Everyone matters." Richard nodded slowly. "Now I know." He stood. "Congratulations, Sophia." And for the first time in his life, the words were genuine. After he left, Sophia sat quietly in her office, thinking, reflecting, remembering the journey, the pain, the struggle, the victories. Then her phone rang. It was her mother. "How did the meeting go?" Sophia smiled. "We bought the company." Her mother laughed. then cried, then laughed again. I wish your grandfather could see this. Sophia looked toward the city skyline. I think he can. Months later, Harper Global became profitable again. Employees were treated better. Workplaces improved. Opportunities expanded. And Sophia became known for something far more important than wealth. Respect. Because she never forgot what it felt like to be disrespected. And that made all the difference. The people who once laughed at her eventually learned a lesson. Never judge someone's future based on their present circumstances. Because today's struggling worker could become tomorrow's owner. Today's underdog could become tomorrow's leader. And today's humiliation could become tomorrow's motivation. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss another powerful story. Also comment below. What was the biggest mistake Richard Harper made? Remember, success isn't about proving people wrong. It's about proving to yourself that you're capable of more than anyone imagined, including you. And sometimes, the people who laugh the loudest today are the same people forced to applaud tomorrow.